Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Digits Dynasty podcast, where we are counting down the greatest athletes to wear each and every uniform number, regardless of the sport, regardless of the league. Today, we are looking at the number 96, and I'm here with Curtis, who is currently halfway through the old 96er.
Oh, bon appetit. Processing very nicely.
That's 6 pounds of meat there, right?
6 pounds, gristle and all. Whole family eats free, though.
Yeah, that's John Candy, Great Outdoors. He ate the old 96er. He finished it, right?
Yeah, the old Chet. Chet finished it. He did finish it for his friend Roman, played by Dan Aykroyd. And Dan Aykroyd, isn't the best friend in the whole world to him in that movie, but they're a killer combo. One of my favorite movies, honestly, where they're chasing around the bats. The raccoons are talking. John Candy goes skiing. So many great moments from that movie. One of my favorite scenes, I think, is when they're grilling out. Chet is John Candy. He's middle America. And then Roman, obviously, is loaded, and they're grilling, and Dan Aykroyd brings lobster tails to the grill, and John Candy brings hot dogs.
That's equal.
And Dan Aykroyd says, you know what hot dogs are made of, don't you, Chet? And Chet's like, no, I don't. He says, lips and a-holes.
That's what he says.
And Roman says, and I love lips. And John Candy looks at him and he says, and I love a-holes.
That's a pretty good actor combination there. That was a good movie. 96, though, not a ton of superstars that we came across. Some cool stories behind some of the guys that wore the number 96. Just right off the bat, we got 96. The element curium is element number 96.
Essential to the world, curium. I use it every day almost.
Named after, of course, the Curies, Pierre and Marie Curie, who were obviously famous scientists. Curium is used in spacecraft, things going up to outer space, spectrometers, and in thermoelectric generators up on spacecrafts. It's only produced artificially, not found naturally at all. We need our spectrometers, right?
We did talk about the moon landing a few weeks ago, so I wonder if they used any curium in the old moon landing.
Ooh.
Supposed moon landing.
It's true, alleged. We did talk about that. I remember the debate. You're 93% sure. 96%?
80%, and I caught a little grief because of it.
Well, you should bump that up to 96.
People call me fake news. Listen, I believe what I believe.
The number 96 is a strobogrammatic number. You know what that is, of course.
Absolutely. I learned that at a very early age.
And for those listeners that don't know, if you were to do a handstand and look at the number 96, it would say 96. So a strobogrammatic number is a number that if you flip it 180 degrees, it's the same exact number.
Now, it's the only number?
No, there's others. 88, okay. 69, 11, 111, 1,111.
Okay.
11,111.
I get it.
It's a pretty cool little tidbit there.
That's cool.
I did learn that word. I knew that if you flipped it upside down, but I didn't know there was an actual word for it.
Strobogrammatic?
Strobogrammatic.
Can I get a word of origin, please? STROBOGRAMATIC?
You forgot an M in there.
Oh, I wondered if there was going to be
double M. I got to get the ding.
Ding.
I think I've probably seen people on TV that are in like third grade that would have gotten that, Curtis.
Hey, second place at my spelling bee. Second place.
There were a lot less words back then.
Yeah, especially where I come from.
Corn, farm, beer.
No beer in third grade.
You know how to spell it, though.
I did come in one time. I was playing outside, running around. I come in the kitchen, and I just picked up the first thing I saw, started chugging it, and it was a beer. And I was just a kid, and I just chucked all over the kitchen floor. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
What's the statute of limitations on underage drinking?
I don't have too much about the number 96. It's kind of a larger number. Some of the smaller numbers have a little bit more history behind them. But I did think about the year 1996. I feel like that's a pretty big year in our history, especially being the age that we are. Me being the elder on the show. You may have been a little younger and not remember some of these things.
I remember 96.
But I was well into my teenage years by this time. So some of the things that happened in 96, obviously we have the Atlanta Olympics.
Probably 7 years old when those came out. But my most vivid memory of the Atlanta Olympics was Michael Johnson was going for the 200 and the 400. He had those gold shoes. And I remember they just kept showing those gold shoes in every single promo. He always just looked so effortless when he ran his races, just like that upright run with those gold shoes, burned in my memory of the 96 Olympics.
Yeah, obviously the opening ceremonies with Muhammad Ali, very historic moment. Nobody knew who it was going to be.
Yeah, I always think that's cool with the Olympics. I'm a big Olympics fan in general, but it's always cool when you start speculating when they're kind of getting ready for the opening ceremonies, like who of this country had a big contribution to the Olympics or to the world in general, and like in sports. And it's pretty cool that Muhammad Ali obviously had the whole history in the 60s when he had to throw his gold medal into the river. I think they actually gave him another one in the Olympics, in the 96 Olympics.
Did they?
I think as a replacement.
Well, I think he was still a controversial figure. It was kind of a risky move because I don't think they knew what the reaction was going to be. They didn't know if people were going to love Muhammad Ali and that he was going to get the reaction that he did. But, I think everybody was happy to see him there. And obviously his Parkinson's was starting to kick in at that time. So everybody had a little bit more of a tender heart towards him and what he gave to his sport. And ultimately, I think looking back, he was kind of standing up for all Americans by saying, we don't need to fight this war. We need to love more. And maybe he didn't love Joe Frazier that much, but
again.
He turned himself into a controversial figure, but what a moment at the Olympics. I do still remember it. I do still remember sitting there watching it in my living room live because we were on the same time zone. Then you had the Magnificent Seven, the Olympics team.
Is that Kerry Strug?
Kerry Strug, the famous
broken ankle,
Kerry Strug to win the gold. Shannon Miller, Dominique Mucciano, Dominique Dawes, a few others that I probably couldn't name off the top of my head, but those were the big ones that I remember. I was 13, so we were enjoying the women's gymnastics team at school.
Like the same age, I think.
Yeah, we were. And then, of course, you have the pipe bomb, which, was tragic, but also just another weird story, but crazy Olympics with all that went on there in Olympic Park. I can't remember the guy's name, but I think he was not guilty, wasn't he? He was framed or something. We'd have to look more into that, but it's a strange story. I know they did like a 30 for 30 on it, or one of those movies, Untold. Turns out that maybe he wasn't that involved. The 96 Olympics, other events that happened in 96, Google was introduced.
Google.
Did you know what they were going to call Google before they called it Google?
100 zeros.
Backdoor.
Oh, yeah. I think Google's probably a better option. Because now I feel like the terminology is, hey, why don't you Google that?
Now it's a verb.
But now I feel like that could say, hey, why don't you backdoor it? I feel like that just doesn't have the same ring to it.
You never know. It could have caught on, but Google is definitely the standard now, and they've turned into way more than a search engine.
Just a bit, yeah.
Independence Day came out. Classic.
Welcome to Earth.
Shooting that green stuff at me again. But I love the opening scene in Independence Day where they're walking out the driveway, and I think Will Smith picks up the newspaper. And who plays his wife in that movie?
Haven't seen it.
Man, you're awesome. But she walks up, and there is a literal spaceship covering the entire sky, and he doesn't notice it until he opens his newspaper, and then he finally sees it. Everyone else around them in the neighborhood is packing their cars, getting out of Dodge. I don't know where they're going to go. He just didn't see it. But he was in the Air Force, I think, and had to go in. And
so not very observant, I guess.
Questionable whether or not he knew the spaceship was there, but made for a dramatic opening. And then we had the Nintendo 64.
Lots of memories with the Nintendo 64.
Oh, yeah? What was your favorite game?
Once we got ours, probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, obviously all the sports games, I feel like we had all those. GoldenEye, I think, clearly tops the list. Mario Kart 64, I could still dominate that game. But we definitely had Madden, as a MLB All-Star Baseball. But yeah, there were a lot of pretty classic games, Smash Brothers.
Mario Kart was by far my favorite game, and probably still is to this day. And I would prefer it on the 64. Like, I don't want to play the new Mario Kart.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I still want to play the classic 64.
Yeah, when the GameCube came out, I still preferred the 64. In college, had some friends that had a Nintendo 64. We would play that. You got Rainbow Road. You got
the castle,
Bowser's Castle. My best, I liked Wario Stadium. I think that was the classic long one. As I got older, you kind of learn the glitches of the system, and you can like finish these races in like 30 seconds. And When you're putting like money and stuff on it, I'd come out on top.
Was that the first one that had like the joysticks?
Yeah, had the joystick, had the Z
Yeah,
trigger
that
underneath,
took a lot of getting used to.
left, right hopping.
You used to only have a couple buttons.
The two most iconic games that stood the test of time, Mario Kart 64 and of course GoldenEye. And GoldenEye, I remember just playing that for hours and hours. Pick odd job, got the little guy, easy to maneuver.
And then the pause music, still famous to today.
That's my ringtone currently on my phone. No joke. Then obviously we played Madden, the baseball games, played I think it was World Cup 98, which was in France, and you play, and it was like Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo, and
Brazilian Ronaldo.
Yeah. And I feel like even like the graphics were obviously like 30 years ago, but you still saw his little patch of hair on his head, and you're like, that's Ronaldo. Like, these graphics are incredible. It's amazing. It looks just like him.
And then finally, Dolly the sheep became the first mammal to be cloned from an adult cell. Not sure what Dolly's up to today.
As long as we're not cloning people yet, I feel like that could be...
I bet we are.
I just don't want to see myself.
We just don't know it. You ever saw the movie Multiplicity?
I don't think I have.
There's like 7 clones. There's like a clone of a clone. Michael Keaton. You gotta check it out. It's fine.
Another like tragic event dealing with the 96, the Liverpool 96. There was a fatal crowd crush at a football match in England in 1989. It was during a FA Cup semifinal between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. And shortly before kickoff, I think there was some confusion. It was a big game. I think they had a lot of people coming in. They failed to do things they were supposed to do to kind of obviously keep everyone safe and keep the crowds going in certain lines. Ultimately, they kind of ordered an exit gate to be opened in an attempt to ease crowding, which actually led to an influx of supporters entering the pens. I think people that didn't have tickets maybe, but this actually resulted in overcrowding of those pens and the fatal crush, a total of 97 fatalities and 766 injuries. This disaster is the deadliest in British sporting history. There were 94 people that died on the day. Another person died in a hospital a few days later, and then another died in 1993. In July 2021, the coroner ruled that a 97 victim, Andrew Devine, who actually died 32 years after the actual event, they determined that actually his death was actually a result of the tragedy 32 years earlier. But for so long, there was only 96 victims. So Liverpool 96, what they call it, even though there were 97 victims. The people that were trapped in the pens, it was just so tightly that many actually died of compressive asphyxia while standing. Just a tragedy.
That's terrible, but a lot of changes were made because of that, and
For sure.
people get in and out of stadiums and some of the safety measures. But what a terrible way to go, and a tragic way to lose someone when you think you're going to a celebratory event.
Yeah,
things turn
to put your team, and yeah. The last thing we'll talk about before getting into the players. Have you ever been to 96, South Carolina? There's a town in South Carolina. Population at the 2020 census was 2,076, and the town is called 96, South Carolina.
Never heard of it. I have heard of a soap opera called The Number 96.
You a big fan of that one?
It's like an Australian soap opera, and apparently it's a bit risque, but when I was looking up the number 96, there is a show called 96. If you have kids, maybe put them to bed first. But I think my favorite 96 is the old 96er.
That's a big piece of meat.
It's a 96-ounce prime age beefsteak, and if any member of your party orders the old 96er and finishes, everybody eats for free. Paul Bunyan's Blue Ox Steak.
You got to eat everything, right? The gristle and the fat.
Gristle and all. The chef comes out and he monitors.
Is there a time limit on that, or was it just a finish?
I don't think there was a time limit. You just have to finish.
Have you ever done any sort of like food eating challenge?
Yeah, I did the 1 pound burger at Fuddruckers.
It's a solid burger with like all toppings, I assume.
Yeah, and I think you have to eat the whole burger and the fries. I mistakenly ordered the bacon cheeseburger. I should have just gone with like a classic hamburger, but I decided to add like 3 or 4 slices of bacon, 3 or 4 slices of cheese, barbecue sauce. It was a mistake, but I still finished. And there's somewhere in Orlando, my picture's on a wall at Fuddruckers.
And you're proud of that?
Very proud.
Right.
Yeah, we all had to. So I was in culinary school. We went after school and before work. So we all put down a pound burger, then had to go work the line that night. And needless to say, I think the tickets were running a little slow that evening. Chef wasn't happy with us. Have you ever done an eating challenge?
I've wanted to. I feel like I don't know that I could put down anything by myself. I've looked into some of the big pizza ones where you kind of get a partner or two.
We've talked about doing one of those.
Yeah, this one up in Tampa.
No desire to do like the 12, nuclear hot wings to see.
I'm not a spice guy, so that wouldn't be good. I'll go for quantity. I want to attempt the hot dog one. Maybe not. I won't get 80 or whatever the record is, but I think I could put down a fair share of hot dogs.
You think you could compete with Joey Chestnut?
I won't compete with him, but I'll compete with someone less.
Kobayashi?
Oh yeah, he's past his prime. I could definitely do that.
That is a disgusting.
Oh, it's not good, but
I
don't think I could wet my buns in water though.
That's the grossest part. I'll eat 90 hot dogs, but I don't want to eat the
and then like wring them out.
All right, that's all I got. We ready to get into some sports?
Yeah, let's talk about some players. Baseball. There have been 8 total players in the history of Major League Baseball who have worn the number 96.
I got a feeling there's going to be some players out here that not many people have heard of.
Yeah, I think we're only going to mention a couple. Anyone who had a WAR above 1. I feel like if you have a negative WAR, we're not even going to mention you.
Pretty low bar.
We have Bill Voiselle, who is actually born in 96, South Carolina. So he actually petitioned Major League Baseball. At the time, they wouldn't allow you to wear a number that big. And so he actually got special permission from the National League to wear the number 96 on his jersey as a way to honor his hometown. At the time was the highest number ever worn in Major League Baseball. He wore the number from 1947 to 1950 for the Boston Braves and the Chicago Cubs.
That's cool.
I think he was born there. I think ultimately retired there. And always kind of would go back home. Everyone, because it's such a small town, I think he got a lot of support there. And obviously being able to wear your town number on your jersey was pretty cool. Another guy, Neftali Feliz, 2021. He came in for 2 relief appearances. He's 1 inning pitched with a 36 ERA. Obviously, he had a career beyond the number 96. He did actually win the Rookie of the Year with the Rangers in 2009. But towards the end of his career, he wanted to wear the number 96, wore it for just 1 inning.
He was Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
You said that?
But not as the number 96. So this was the twilight of his career. A third guy we'll talk about, Tommy Hunter. He wore the number 96 for the Phillies from 2018 to 2020. He wasn't great, but did wear the number 96, so we're going to talk about him. He had a 5-5 record and a 3.64 ERA in 94 relief appearances, but that is better than the other 96 in team history, Feliz that we just mentioned. So I guess you could say Tommy Hunter is the greatest 96 to pitch for the Phillies. And you don't even know who he is.
He's my favorite 96 to pitch for the Phillies.
I guess he's in my top 2. So that's it for baseball. Moving on to basketball. There are only 2 players in the history of basketball to wear the number 96. One of them was Don Ray, who wore it in 1950 for the Tri-City Blackhawks. The Tri-City Blackhawks, of course, were coached by Red Auerbach. This was before he was coaching the Celtics. So he coached the Blackhawks in 1949 and had a 28-29 record with the Blackhawks. This was the only losing season and only non-playoff season of his entire 20-year coaching career. He was the longtime coach of the Celtics. They had 9 NBA titles, won 938 games, and coached countless Hall of Famers who we'll be discussing throughout this Digits Dynasty podcast when we hit a lot of these numbers. And as general manager, they won 7 more championships. He's a pretty good coach. When he coached Donnie Ray, when he wore 96, so his only losing season.
Those old Tri-Cities Blackhawks, they were not to be messed with.
No, they became the Milwaukee Hawks and then the St. Louis Hawks and then are now currently the Atlanta Hawks.
Oh, really? Is that where the name Hawks comes from?
That's it. They've morphed from the Tri-City Blackhawks ultimately to the Atlanta Hawks.
Well, that's cool. Good story.
The other 96, currently known as Meta World Peace.
Yeah.
He was known as Ron Artest when he wore the number 96 for 1 season, the 2008-2009 Houston Rockets. During that season, he played in 69 games. He averaged 17.1 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. He wore the number 96 because if you look at it, it's a Q and a lowercase b. The housing project where he grew up was Queensbridge. So it's QB,
That's
96.
Bit of a stretch with the QB, but okay.
In the playoffs that year, he helped the Rockets advance past the first round for the first time in 12 seasons. In Game 2 of the second round against the Lakers, Artest, who was battling for rebounding position against a Kobe Bryant, was elbowed in the neck by Bryant, which was later ruled to be a Type 1 flagrant foul. After being called for an offensive foul, Artest was indignant and proceeded to antagonize Bryant after the play, which eventually led to an ejection by Joe Crawford. And then in Game 3, he was again ejected after a hard foul on Pau Gasol, who was attempting to dunk on a fast break. It was determined the next day that the foul was not serious enough to warrant ejection. The flagrant foul was downgraded. Ron Artest was a character.
Love me some Ron Artest. As a Pacers fan, he was really good with the Pacers. Obviously we've talked about the malice at the Palace and how much that destroyed their chances of winning the title that year. But he was a great player, and kind of one of those guys that you love him on your team, you hate him when he's not. I guess sometimes you probably didn't like him when he's on your team.
Yeah, it's true. If he's going to be
He'd
having
get kicked out of, semifinal games, so not so good there. But that was a good team he was on there with the Rockets. I think Yao Ming was on that team, right?
Yeah, I was there, yeah.
But the Lakers ended up going on to win the finals that year.
The first of 2 in a row, right?
You're right. They did win 2 in a row. They went to 3 in a row, but lost to the Celtics in 2008. They beat the Magic in 2009, and then got revenge against the Celtics in 2007 and 2010. So nice little run there.
So during that ejection, him and Kobe kind of went back and forth. They were interviewing Ron Artest after the game, and he told the media, "I know rough play," that one of his friends died during a playoff game after being stabbed in the heart with a table leg. And so everyone was like, come on, like, what's Ron Artest talking about? But there was an article, there was a I think like up in like Niagara Falls, there was like a tournament, and a fight broke out, and some guy stabbed another guy with a table leg and killed him. And allegedly Ron Artest was there and witnessed this tragic event.
I vaguely remember that. And everyone's like, this dude, no way. Sure enough, one of his friends got stabbed with a table leg. Crazy.
And the story definitely happened. I think people wonder whether Ron Artest actually was physically there for it. Potentially he would have been about 10 years old or something like that. So I'm not sure if he was actually there. But yeah, there was a fight between the players and about 40 fans in the stands. One person was stabbed in the back.
I mean, he's clearly had some traumatic things happen to him in his life.
Yeah.
Just judging by some of his behavior.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he was there.
When the Lakers won back-to-back there, he was in the second one, right? And he thanked his psychiatrist right after the game.
Yeah, he was there. He was Metal World Peace when he won that title, wasn't he?
Oh, so he must have changed his name after the Rocket season.
Now, he wore like 6 or 7
Yeah,
numbers.
We're going to be revisiting him.
So we will revisit
96 was not his best number, though.
the legend of Ron Artest.
I think between Ron Artest and Dennis Rodman, I feel like they're going to be making quite a few actual appearances on the podcast, where I think some people will kind of mention some like anecdotes and stuff like that, but I think they'll actually be in contention to potentially
Imagine if they ever played on the same team.
Ooh, that was like a couple weeks ago. We talked about Terrell Owens and Chad Ochocinco. I feel like it was kind of like that type of
and you have Lambeer and Rodman.
Well, that's it for basketball. Just those two guys. They're the only two that have ever worn 96 in the NBA. Moving on to football, a couple guys here that are worth mentioning. I guess these are going to be a lot of defensive guys, defensive line, big 6'3", 300-pound guys. Clyde Simmons, for 15 years, he wore the number 96 with 5 teams. He ended his career with 121.5 sacks, 2 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pros. Adalius Thomas is a one-time Super Bowl champion. He spent 10 years with the Ravens and the Patriots. He ended his career with 53 sacks. He was one of 4 Patriots sent home as a result of being late for a morning meeting on a snowy Wednesday morning prior to a Week 14 matchup. The next day, he told the press that he called the team saying, "Hey, I'm stuck in traffic," but he was still sent home upon arriving. He continued to question the perceived motivational aspect of the decision, saying, "Motivation is for kindergartners. I'm not a kindergartner." Carlos Dunlap, he spent 11 years with the Cincinnati Bengals. He ended his career with 100 career sacks, 82.5 of them with the number 96. His first career sack was against number 18, Peyton Manning.
Story he still tells his children.
A two-time Pro Bowler. He wore number 8 in college for the national champion 2008 Gators. Those 2008 Gators keep popping up.
Yeah, there's a bigger story to those '08 Gators than is being told.
By the end of this podcast, by the end of this series, we'll hopefully figure it out. Maybe we'll try to get all these guys on. Tebow,
real story.
Urban Meyer. We're going to get down to it.
I want some bar stories. I want to know what really happened.
Sign some NDAs.
On campus.
Some immunities we'll give out. Cortez Kennedy is 6'3", 306-pounder. Started playing football in high school. He was a star defensive player, but he didn't really care too much about academics. And so as a sophomore, he actually had to leave the team. And he said that his mother sent him a wish you were here postcard from the state championship game that year, which he was not allowed to play at. This motivated him to figure out his academic standing. And by his senior year in 1985, he led his team in Arkansas to the state championship. He was selected 3rd overall by Seattle in the 1990 draft, following 2 national championships at the University of Miami. And he would play his entire 11-year career with the Seattle Seahawks. He was an 8-time Pro Bowler, earned 3 first-time All-Pro nods, and was named to the NFL's 1990s All-Decade team. He did, quick little side note here, he actually changed his number to 99 in 1992 to honor fallen Philadelphia Eagles nose tackle and friend Jerome Brown, fellow Miami Hurricane, who passed away in a car accident. And that season, he actually would go on to win the NFL Defensive Player of the Year award.
Wow.
So he changed his number to his friend's number for 1 year, won the Defensive Player of the Year award, not with the 96, though. So I don't know if that's going to hurt his case in our
that might hurt his case. He's got a lot of competition here, too, considering those baseball players who went through. I can't remember one of their names, but I think Cortez Kennedy is probably...
I'm trying to remember as well.
Probably the leader in the clubhouse right now, but pretty cool story that he, kind of won Defensive Player of the Year in honor of his friend Jerome. He did weigh in at 6'3", 306 pounds. So those poor quarterbacks probably got smushed a little bit prior to the rule where you could land on them. You kind of just tackle them and then fall on them. I'm sure Cortez loved falling on a quarterback.
Ultimately retired after the 2000 season. He played in 167 games with Seattle. He had 668 tackles, 58 sacks, and 3 interceptions. He sat out the whole 2001 season and announced his retirement after that. He did have several opportunities to keep playing, but wanted to finish his career in Seattle, and I think is generally considered to be one of the best defensive tackles to ever play in the NFL. He did ultimately get elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2012 and was the second Hall of Famer to earn his credentials primarily as a Seahawk.
Who was the first? Was it the wide receiver Steve Largent?
You are correct, sir.
Bam. I believe Steve still leads Seahawks in receiving yards to this day.
I think they haven't had any. I'm trying to think of current.
Tyler Lockett, Doug Baldwin, I think, are on that list. Obviously, now you have DK Metcalf, but they're not doing enough to catch Largent.
Another Hall of Famer wore the number 96 for just 1 year with the 1951 Cleveland Browns as a defensive back. Of course, he got his Hall of Fame induction as a coach, Don Shula. Obviously, the most regular season wins of all time, has the only perfect season in NFL history. But as a player, he wore the number 96 for just one of his 7 years playing in the NFL.
Did not know that. Don Shula did coach a guy named Alfred Ogleby, who wore the number 96. And he had a short career, only played for the Dolphins for maybe a season or two, but he missed practice. And
practice? We're talking about practice?
We're talking about practice. And they actually called the police because they couldn't find him. He went out drinking the night before. His car, his BMW, was found in a rough part of Miami. And he shows up to practice late, and he's afraid of Don Shula and what his punishment's going to be. So he tells Shula, he says, I was kidnapped, driven out into the Everglades, and I walked to practice. Well, he starts being questioned by the police, and it gets harder and harder to tell his story, and finally says, okay, I wasn't kidnapped. I was just afraid of what Shula's punishment was going to be.
That's pretty telling. I feel like if you're that scared, the police are going to get involved. Eventually they're going to figure it out.
Yeah, Alfred Ogilvy, number 96. So I doubt he played many more seasons with the Dolphins, but they had a short career. I think only 5 years, but great story. Don Shula won some titles, though. How many did he get? I know he won. Did he win with the Colts and the Dolphins?
He's a one-time NFL champion, two-time Super Bowl champion.
Oh, he won with the Colts before it was a Super Bowl?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
won with the Colts.
Yeah, the Baltimore Colts in 1968.
And then the last perfect season.
And then, then they had two consecutive Super Bowls, 7 and 8. Super Bowl 7, they beat the Redskins for the perfect season. And then in the next season, they beat the Minnesota Vikings.
Was that the Purple People Eaters?
The Purple People Eaters is the best nickname for a whole defense. It's pretty cool.
I mean, the 70s had the bet. Like, that was where, teams had nicknames. They had the Steel Curtain, the Purple People Eaters. I don't know any others, but
I think more recently you had the greatest show on turf, the Rams.
Then you have the Raiders of the 70s. The autumn wind is a pirate blustering in from the sea. With a rollicking song he sweeps along, swagging boisterously. His face is weather-beaten. He wears a hooded sash with a silver hat about his head and a bristling black mustache. What a great, I miss these days. Why don't we do that still?
It's so much more cinematic back then.
Right?
If you think now, that's Chris Collinsworth would be all over that. No, we're just going to call them by their names.
You ever watch that in the NFL films? I do no justice to that guy's.
Not even close.
I sound more like I'm reading "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" to my child, but go back and just listen to the autumn wind. It's amazing. I want that time back. I want to watch a show on Tuesday that is similar to what the NFL films was. Because do they even do NFL films anymore?
I think now they do it's more like the mic'd up and the football life.
Yeah, and those are cool. Don't get me wrong. I like those. But Steve Sable and his son.
Yeah, they're not doing the full stories.
No, they're not. They're not telling the story of the players. But I guess you have social media, and we know too much now.
Darn us.
Darn technology. All of our information.
Thanks, Google.
Created in
1996.
That's right.
Any other football guys?
No, I was struggling to come up with anybody. I found Alfred Ogilvy. I was pretty proud of myself for the kidnapping story.
For the story or for finding him? Did you find him?
Actually, my wife sent me that.
Oh, now we got to credit her. Tell her to spend less time getting you stories and start calling up her Gator alumni.
Okay. She is a Gator alum. Saw 2 football titles, saw 2 basketball titles.
It's a pretty solid college career.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it before, but
and graduated.
Wow. She had a full ride. Not to brag on my wife, but I'm not gonna act like I'm the smartest guy in the.
She probably used a lot of Google. That was pre-AI, so maybe pre-Chat GPT.
Listen, we've talked before, and when she was in college, and listen, there's only a couple years difference between us. Her college, she had Google. And when I went to college, I did not have Google. Even though it came out in 96, we were still not using it.
Yeah, to get mainstream. Yeah, I wasn't there yet.
I was still doing microfilm, the thing you roll.
Oh, I know.
Come on, man. What am I doing?
Yeah, tell her to get on
I could have been a lawyer too, but I didn't have Google.
Tell her to get on the alumni page. Call up Tim Tebow.
She ran into Tim Tebow one time in the
dining hall, right?
Dining hall, yeah. She said that she turned around and he turned around and her tray went flying.
Her pickup line was not very good.
I told her that was her chance. That's your chance, but she ended up with me. She's better off. I bring a lot more to the table. I have a podcast.
I'm trying to be nice. In the NHL, there's 15.
Good segue. Good segue.
Trying to save you here. 15 total players in the history of the NHL to wear the number 96, which is weird. I feel like in hockey, I feel like you see all sorts of numbers. There's a lot of 90s. Obviously, 99 was Gretzky. There's even today, there's a lot of all throughout the 90s,
Stamkos.
80s. Yeah, 91. And
I don't know. Yeah, you do see 90s out there on the ice.
There's a lot of 80s. It just, there's no reason there shouldn't be more 90s, 96s especially. We'll go through a couple of them. Pierre-Marc Bouchard.
Nailed it.
He spent 11 years with the Wild and the Islanders. played almost 600 games with 110 goals. Pavel Bure,
Nailed it.
at the start of the 95-96 season, he's changed his number from number 10 to number 96. The switch commemorated September 6th, 1991, the day which he first landed in North America from Moscow. The 9th month, 6th day, 9/6/96. Spent 2 years with the Canucks. Again, wore 10 for the majority of his career and is in the Hall of Fame. I think mainly with his number 10 stats. Tomas Holmstrom,
Nailed it.
15-year career with the Red Wings, a 4-time Stanley Cup champion. He settled on number 96 because that was the year he made his way to North America to play for the Detroit Red Wings. His coach at the time, Hall of Famer Scotty Bowman, took a slight dig at the Swedish forward. He said that Holmstrom should take 98 because that's the year you're going to go back to Europe. He took a few too many penalties in his early days, and this dig at his potentially leaving the NHL woke him up, and he ended up playing over 1,000 games and scored 243 goals. Mikko Rantanen, born in 1996, that's the number.
Nailed it.
He is a current player, still playing for the Avalanche. He is 9 years in, 570 games played with 262 goals. 1 Stanley Cup, 2-time All-Star, Mikko Rantanen. I think I did pretty good with those names.
You had 15 of these guys we got to listen to?
No, there was 15. Those were the top 5 or 6. There is one more hockey guy. I don't think he made it to the NHL. I think his coach tried to make it to the NHL, and I think his coach is someone we'll mention in the future. Charlie Conway,
Yes.
number 96. Of course, played for Coach Gordon Bombay. He's obviously, Mighty Ducks was, we talked about the 90s. It led to an actual franchise of the Mighty Ducks based on the movie. But Charlie Conway, I think as a player, I don't know that he's in contention for the greatest 96. I don't know that he is in the top 5, 6. This might be controversial, but I don't think he's in the top 5 or 6 players on his team. I know he was the captain. I have a couple of theories on that. I think Coach Bombay had a little thing for Charlie's mom. And I think the first movie, I think that's why Bombay took a liking to Charlie and tried to take him under his wing, make him captain. But he was not a very good player. I feel like everyone called him Spazwoid and Spazway. He did, in the Pee Wee final, he did draw the last second penalty shot. The ref said, hey, coach, you can pick any player you want to take the shot. And every single person on the team is like, Guy take the shot. And then Bombay's like, nope, I got a thing for Charlie's mom. He's going to be taking the shot instead. In Mighty Ducks 2, Charlie offers to give up his roster spot when they make it to the Goodwill games and they played Trinidad and Tobago, which makes a lot of sense. He's like, no, I'll give up my roster spot so that Adam Banks can rejoin the team. And not one person's like, no, you should stay. You'd think that, there's like one person be like, hey, why don't we take out the figure skater or the rancher kid who never passes? But nope, they're all very okay with the idea that Charlie will not be on the ice with them. Mighty Ducks 3, he's also, no one's really supporting him. He's kind of saying like, no, we're the Ducks. And they're all like, yeah, we were the Ducks like 10 years ago when we were like a Pee Wee hockey team. Like, we're in high school now. And like, this is the future. Like, we're not the Ducks anymore. Let's move on. We're not 11. He did score some big goals. He did get the game-winning goal in the Pee Wee final with the triple deke, that mind-blowing shot. He drew up the aerial play against Iceland in Mighty Ducks 2, and then kind of set up Goldberg's game winner at the end of Mighty Ducks 3. Much better coach than player. I'm not saying he's not a hockey mind. He just needs to stay in the bench and not go on the ice.
He's the captain. And listen, Ray Lewis gave a speech about the lion and how the lion is the king of the jungle. But is the lion the biggest guy in the jungle? No, that's the elephant. Is the lion the smartest? No. Is he the tallest? Is he the fastest?
Maybe.
He's none of these. But the lion is the king of the jungle because of his mentality. And Charlie Conway had the it factor.
I don't think he had it in the first one, though.
Maybe he didn't know he had it yet.
Maybe that's it. Okay.
Bombay brought out of him.
Because then it was also weird with like Bombay. Yeah, we'll talk more about him with 9, but he was like apparently like the greatest Pee Wee hockey player like in the history of like the world. Like he had like 500 goals in like a season. Like it averaged out
16 and a half goals a game.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And then after he missed a shot that wouldn't even have won the game, it just
Just
made
to go to overtime.
just to go to overtime. He missed that, so he
Well, he
didn't
would have
win.
won the game,
He,
but it didn't, and they had to go to
it
overtime.
didn't lose
instead.
the game. He then quit hockey, and
Quit.
no one was like, "Hey, dude, it's one game. You're the greatest hockey player of all time."
Well,
Wayne Gretzky, who? We got Gordon Bombay, and then
he could have scored like 6 goals in the overtime period because
that he was probably due.
you know what I mean. I want to dive so much more into Gordon Bombay, Charlie Conway.
I'm excited for 9.
Charlie Conway is a legend in his own right, and he's not to be overrated.
If you're trying to get me to agree to put him on the wall as our greatest 96, I'm going to shoot you down.
I want the Ducks jersey
I'll take
on the wall.
I'll take Don Shula. I'll take someone else that I've never heard of.
Oh yeah, you don't even remember any of the guys we talked about tonight.
Charlie Conway, I can't do it. I think just the general this is going a little off topic, but we were 96 today, so we didn't get too much content, I feel like. But in Mighty Ducks 1, there are a bunch of hockey players who don't know how to skate, right? And then they win the Pee Wee. They beat the old coach who had been coaching for like 50 years, who doesn't have any kids or anything. Like, it's weird how much Gordon's old coach is like so into Pee Wee hockey in Minnesota. And like, yeah, no kids or anything like that. And he like pops the collar and he recognizes Gordon after not seeing him for 30 years. But anyways, Mighty Ducks 2, this same team with like 3 other guys is now representing the United States of America in the Goodwill Games. And they're playing teams like Italy, Trinidad and Tobago, no hockey powerhouses like Russia or Canada, like teams you'd think you'd play in a worldwide tournament. And then in Mighty Ducks 3, they come back and they're now fighting for a spot on the JV team at their high school. These people just represented America. Sorry.
Love the passion. You're right. You're right.
I'm always right.
The story doesn't add up. And you know those actors didn't even know how to skate when they started the movie. Like, they all said they could.
I think I did know that, yeah.
And they couldn't.
Yeah,
You know
Kenan
Charlie-
Thompson.
Do what?
Kenan Thompson.
He was in that?
He was Knuckle Puck.
Was he really? That's cool.
Mighty Ducks 2.
Did you know Charlie Conway was supposed to be Jake Gyllenhaal, but his parents said he was not going to do that role. So he went to Joshua Jackson instead.
Yeah, who's become a pretty solid actor in his own right. So while we're talking movies, I feel like usually I feel like somehow we get on a tangent. Hockey movies? Any other hockey movies in your...
I mean,
This-
Miracle.
Miracle is classic.
Yeah.
Herb Brooks. I think that's a pretty accurate, true to real life.
Speech he gives, just the whole story of how, they're clowning around and then all of a sudden they're,
We got to come together and...
taking on the Russians. And you have Al Michaels to call there. Great movie.
Yeah, been up to Lake Placid a couple times.
Have you?
Walked on the ice and I just felt so like...
That's cool.
So cool. I remember my dad said back in 1980 when they were playing in the Soviet Union, he said he was just driving in his car and I guess the radio came on and it kind of said, like we talked about earlier, like they're going to air this on prime time later. And I guess the person, the radio personality was like, hey, I know I'm not supposed to say anything. Might get in trouble for this. I just can't hold in like the excitement. The U.S. beat the Soviet Union today. And then they proceeded to play the whole, they played the match. And my dad said he was driving some hills and stuff and he was kind of in and out of radio, like good radio quality. And so he said, finally he found a good spot. He knew they were going to win. He's like, I just parked, sat for a couple hours, listened to the whole game. And he's like, it just meant so much back then. Obviously it was more than just a hockey game.
Yeah.
There was so much worldwide that this meant with the Cold War and everything. A bunch of amateur hockey players from all over the country. It's cool that they could beat this team that had been together for 20 years, won like 5 consecutive gold medals. We talked about Muhammad Ali lighting the torch in the Olympics in 96, but Michael Ruggiero and the whole team, they lit the Olympic torch in 2002 in Salt Lake when they had the Winter Olympics there. But yeah, just a great movie.
Great story about your dad. I mean, how cool to just be like sitting in your car and I'm sure he still remembers it like it was yesterday.
Yeah, he tells me that. And I think that's super cool. And then the fact that the radio guy's like, I know I'm not supposed to tell you this, but this is just, so exciting and a great story for America. Are we debating here? I feel like I don't want to.
If we're debating, it's got to be between Charlie Conway and Cortez Kennedy.
Maybe we'll get some Ron Artest in there too.
No, I don't think so.
I feel like are we giving this to Cortez Kennedy?
I'm comfortable with that.
I think my advice as we move forward with this podcast, I think if there's any kids listening and you want to ultimately make it to the top of one of our best of lists, I think you got to find one of these numbers that I'm sure we'll go to some that are not going to be as in-depth as this, but there's going to be some numbers out there I think that are very easy to get on the top of those lists.
I mean, listen, if you're an up-and-coming defensive lineman, put the number 90. Don't wear 92. Don't wear 99. Don't wear these numbers that have legends. 96. Kids, start wearing it now.
And you could someday get on our wall and dethrone Cortez Kennedy, who we are agreeing is going to be our 96 that we're putting on the wall.
I'm good with Cortez.
Seattle Seahawks, number 96, Cortez Kennedy.
The Seahawks jersey. I like their logo.
Especially, I like the old school too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, less debate than normal, but I think a fun episode overall. It's kind of fun talking about all these guys. You could kind of see why they picked the number 96, which is pretty cool. I kind of find that very interesting as to why they're picking certain numbers.
Because it's strobogrammatic?
Yeah, I was going to say like sentimental to people, but yeah, that works too.
Okay, that too.
When we get to like 88, we'll have to see if that's constant, if people are picking it for the stromogrammaticity. Grammaticy? Is that I don't know if that's a word. But let's spin the wheel, see what we got next week, see if we'll have more of a debate than we did today. But it was still, again, cool talking about Cortez Kennedy and the rest of the 96ers. Spin that wheel, though. $57. Initial thoughts?
57. Clay Matthews.
All right. So the whole Matthews family there, they got a pretty, like the first family of football.
Yeah, I think this is going to be Clay Matthews' father.
The OG.
From the Packers.
Okay, so the one of the Packers, he was Clay Matthews the third. Johan Santana, I feel like, for the Mets.
Okay, yeah.
He had a no-hitter. I think I was watching that in a bar.
Mo Lewis.
Oh, Mo Lewis.
Retired by the Patriots.
He's on Tom Brady's number one. Yeah, he was the one who hit Bledsoe in 2001, led to Tom Brady's emergence. I feel like basketball is going to be quiet. Hockey's probably going to be quiet.
You're going to see some defensive linebackers.
Yep,
there.
some linebackers.
Tom Jackson, he played for the Broncos for quite a few years, 15 seasons or so. I think he wore 57. Okay, so we got some good content, better than 96, I think.
I don't want to say it'd have to be, but we'll see. I think it's not terrible if we have some maybe shorter episodes that less debate.
Initially, it sounds like we might have another football jersey on our wall. I hate to go football heavy, but that's just the way the wheel's been landing lately.
Yeah, and I think with football, obviously, there's more guys on the team, more numbers available. There we have the greatest number 96 of all time in our books, Cortez Kennedy. Write us, let us know if you agree, disagree, if there were any players that we missed. Our email address is digitsdynastypodcast@gmail.com. Instagram at Digits Dynasty Podcast as well. Next week, we'll look at the number 57. If there are any players that are not to be left off the list, any stories that need to be told about players who wore the number 57, the email address again is digitsdynastypodcast@gmail.com.
You know, we talked about Tom Jackson. It kind of is the same as NFL films. I don't know if I'm getting older or if TV's getting worse. That Monday Night Countdown with Tom Jackson and Chris Berman. Remember they used to do Jacked Up?
That
got jacked up.
They did that, and I also love like the 2-minute drill, like when he would Berman would go through and like the whole recap in 2 minutes. I never liked his. I kind of got tired of Berman over the years, and he could go all the way, and I was like, all right. Or like when he would do the home run derby, and it would just be constantly like back, go on.
No, like we get it.
Like all right,
home runs in.
He was good, but
it was great.
Got a little tiring by the end.
But him and Tom Jackson were great.
They were very good together.
Yeah. I love that Jacked Up because it was always right before the game started.
Yeah.
More popular segments.
Really like pump up the fans.
Yeah. Can't do that anymore.
They do.
It's politically incorrect, I think, nowadays.
And then they also do the Come On Man.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, man. Those were good. Kind of just like the stupidity, the mind blanking of NFL players. Thank you for listening, and please join us next week as we count down another number on the list.